The afternoon heat rose from the earth like a breath. In the far east, a cloud of dust marked their advance. The full-grown male lion, with fur white as salt, a clear, thick mane, muscles taut beneath the skin, Casper, walked without hurry. He had been traveling that invisible road for 11 years. 11 years since his father had fallen to the teeth of a rival coalition. Beside him, 3 more silhouettes moved in loose formation. Mfawethu, Casanova, and Footloose. His brothers, his coalition. The one they called the Coalition of Brothers. The wind brought familiar scents. The smell of the Satara territory. The smell of the pride that was once his father's. But Casper did not roar. He didn't need to announce himself. The Savanna already knew he was coming. This is not a story about a legendary king. There are no crowns, no axes, no thrones of carved wood. This is the story of a white lion who saw his father die when his coat was still spotted with infancy, lost 8 brothers over the course of a decade, and returned to claim what no one believed possible. This is the story of Casper. To understand what happened that day in February of the year 2020, you have to go back 11 years. Because white lions are not a separate species. They are ordinary lions, tawny lions as scientists call them, with a rare genetic mutation called leucism. They are not albinos. Their eyes have color. Their skin, beneath the fur, has pigment. But the coat that covers them is white, as if the moon had left its light upon their backs. The Shangaan tribe has revered them for centuries. In their language, they call them the sons of the sun. But the reverence of men does not stop the teeth of other lions. In the Timbavati region, where the mopane grows twisted and the grasses rise to a man's chest, a coalition of 3 adult males dominated the Satara pride. Casper's father was the leader. Dark mane, thick neck, the gaze of one who has won every battle he has ever fought. But rival coalitions were watching too. Male lions do not age in peace. Every dry season brings new contenders. Young males who have been expelled from their own prides, who wander in groups of 2 or 3, who accumulate scars and learn to fight. And when their time comes, they attack. Casper's father had been defending the territory for 4 years. 4 years of nightly patrols, of roars that crossed the plain, of confrontations that left marks on his skin. But 4 years is a long life for a dominant lion. The rivals arrived at the end of the dry season. The adult lioness, with pale golden fur and ribs visible beneath her skin, Casper's mother, smelled the danger before she saw it. Her tail moved once, quickly. The 3 cubs resting in her shade sat up. Casper was the smallest and the most visible. His white fur shone among the burned grasses like a beacon. The lioness nudged him with her muzzle toward the thicket, but it was already too late. The invading males were less than 200 meters away. The history of white lions in the wild is a history of loss. For 13 years, between the late 90s and the early 2010s, white lions were considered extinct in the wild. 13 years without a single confirmed sighting in Timbavati. 13 years in which they survived only in breeding centers and zoos under the care of human hands. A lion ecologist named Jason Turner spent more than 6 years studying the dynamics of Timbavati prides. He developed a reintroduction protocol based on social bonding techniques with the area's common lions. His goal was not to breed white lions in captivity forever. It was to return them to their natural habitat, to restore the evolutionary process that humans had interrupted. But at that time, before 2010, before Mara, a rescued white lioness, considered an icon of African culture, set foot again on the land of her ancestors, before her 3 cubs with no human imprint came into the world. Casper and his pride lived in a world where white lions were only a memory. Casper's father died at dawn. The invading coalition, 3 young males with barely formed manes, attacked when the light was still gray. The father defended the territory alone for a time no one measured exactly. The human witnesses who arrived later found the marks. The grass trampled in a circle 30 meters in diameter, the African ebony bushes broken, the dried blood on the stones. The mother fled north with the 2 surviving cubs. Casper was still nursing when fear settled into his bones. The Shangaan tribe says that white lions are messengers, that when one appears, something is about to change. But the lioness running with Casper between her teeth was not thinking about divine messages. She was thinking about the shadow of the trees, about the water at the next watering hole, about the smells of the predators tracking her. The following days were the most dangerous. Lionesses who lose their dominant male enter a state of extreme vulnerability. Without protection, the cubs are exposed to hyenas, leopards, other lion coalitions, and the invading males, when they take over a pride, commit infanticide. Not out of malice, out of biology. Females do not ovulate while nursing. Killing the cubs brings them into estrus faster and allows the new males to leave their own offspring. The lioness knew this without knowing it. That is why she ran. 20 kilometers to the east, the invading coalition was already marking the territory. They roared at night, leaving their scent on every bush with urine and facial glands. The Satara pride, the adult females, the subadults, watched them from a distance. The cycle repeated itself. The new males would last a few years. They would be displaced by others, and those by others. The Savanna has no long memory, but Casper would. Casper's first year of exile was a constant battle for survival. White lions, young males in particular, face a disadvantage that their common-coated brothers do not know. In the tall grass of Timbavati, in the dappled shade of the Mopane forests, a common lion blends into the landscape. Its coloration is camouflage. It is the reason they can approach prey without being detected. A white lion does not have that advantage. When Casper hunted, the prey saw him from twice the distance. Zebras, wildebeests, impalas spotted his pale silhouette among the shadows and fled before he could close the gap. For a young lion barely learning to coordinate attacks, that difference can be death. His mother hunted for him, but his mother also hunted for herself. And hunting for two, with compromised visibility, meant hunting towards starvation. By 18 months, Casper had already developed a pattern. He hunted at dusk, when the oblique light confused the prey. He moved among the rocks, using the contrast of shadows. He learned to read the wind better than any lion his age. But he also learned to fight. Young males, when expelled from their natal pride, usually wander alone or in pairs. They rarely survive alone. The statistics of the Savanna are brutal. More than half of the males who attempt a nomadic life die before reaching 3 years old. They die of starvation, of infected wounds, under the teeth of other lions. Casper survived because he found Mfawethu. Mfawethu was another young male expelled from his pride. Pale coat, almost golden, without Casper's whiteness, but without the dark mane of the dominance. They met at a watering hole north of the Timbavati River. They sniffed each other for several minutes. There was no aggression. The scientists who study lion behavior call this moment the formation of the coalition. It is the strongest bond a male lion will form in his entire life. Stronger than the bond with a female. Stronger than the bond with cubs. Two young males who ally can do what one alone cannot. Take a territory. Casper and Mfawethu roamed together for 2 more years. They learned to coordinate their attacks. Casper charged from the left, Mfawethu from the right. They took turns drinking while one kept watch. They slept back to back, their breaths synchronized beneath the starry sky of the Savanna. Casanova and Footloose joined later. 2 true brothers, with thick coats and broad jaws. The coalition of brothers now had 4 members, but Casper was still the white one. Rumors of his existence ran through the reserve. Tour guides mentioned him in low voices. Trackers from local communities exchanged information about his movements. A white lion, healthy, large, accompanied by 3 dark-coated males, moving through territories that no pride claimed. Rumors of his miraculous recovery spread like a fire carried by the African wind. The lions spoke of the white lion who had returned from death, but the reality was simpler. Casper had not died. He was just waiting. At 4 years old, the white male lion, Casper, already weighed over 190 kilograms. His mane, which had begun to darken slightly at the tips, fell over his shoulders like a cloak of cloud. His muscles, forged in years of endless walks and street fights against hyenas and solitary males, tightened his skin with every movement. He was not the largest lion on the Savanna, but he was the one who had best learned to survive. In those 4 years, he had lost count of the confrontations. At least 7 serious fights, according to the trackers who followed his tracks. 3 visible scars, one over his left eye, another on his right flank, a third on his muzzle, where a rival male had sunk his canine 2 years earlier. Each scar was a lesson. Each lesson, one step closer to the return. In the spring of 2019, Casper and his coalition began moving south. During those 11 years, the White Lion protagonist had lost 8 brothers and had witnessed his father's death before returning to claim a kingdom. But the brothers he lost were not his current companions. They were the cubs who had died alongside him, under the same sun, in the same days of flight. 8 brothers, 11 years, 1 return. The numbers meant nothing to the lions, but for the men tracking these stories, they were a measure of something approaching. The Satara pride was still there. The males who had killed Casper's father were gone. They had been displaced by another coalition 5 years earlier, and those, in turn, by others. The territory changed hands like the wind changes direction. The lionesses were still there. The cubs that had survived were now adults. But the white genetics, that rare mutation scientists call leucism, had not been seen in the region in over a decade, until Casper crossed the invisible line. On the night of February 10th, the trackers at the Timbavati Reserve reported something unusual. 4 logs, moving in formation, advancing toward the central territory of Satara. The leader, they said, was white. His coat glowed under the moon like a smoke signal. By dawn, the 4 lions had disappeared among the mopan trees. But the roars of the previous night told a different story. The brothers' coalition had arrived. Casper did not attack immediately. That was not his style. Lions who carry 11 years of exile learn to wait for the exact moment. The dominant Satara coalition, 3 adult males with dark manes, patrolled the perimeter with the confidence that comes from 5 years of uninterrupted rule. Casper watched from a distance, measured, calculated. 3 males, 4 brothers. The math was simple. The confrontation lasted less than anyone expected. There were no prolonged roars, no circling or choreographed threats. The males of the brothers' coalition advanced directly toward the center of the territory, and the Satara males responded as they had to respond. The lionesses retreated with the cubs into the thicket. The subadults climbed into the low trees. The savanna fell silent. Casper was the first to charge. His white coat, which for years had made him a target, now functioned as a psychological weapon. In the half-light of dawn, beneath the low rays filtering through the trees, he looked like a ghost. The Satara males hesitated for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. Casper hit the lead male with his shoulder, throwing him off balance before he could sink his fangs. Mumfawethu came in from the side, biting the back of the second rival. Casanova and Footloose cornered the third against a wall of termite mounds. No one died. Lions rarely kill other adult lions in territorial fights. The blood that was spilled was scant. But when the sun was fully above the horizon, the brothers' coalition roared from the central hill of Satara, and the 3 displaced males ran north, heads low, not looking back. The Satara pride watched the scene from a distance. The lionesses, the subadults, the cubs barely opening their eyes. They knew what that arrival meant. They had seen the cycle too many times. But perhaps, for the first time in 13 years, one of the lionesses recognized something in the white coat of the new dominant male. Something she could not name. Something older than memory. Casper, the white-coated male lion with his pale mane and a muzzle marked by 3 scars, lay down in the shade of the tree where his father used to rest. He closed his eyes, and the pride began to gather around him, as if he had always been there. The story of the white lions is the story of a rarity surviving against all odds. In the private Timbavati Reserve, where the reintroduction program of the Global White Lion Protection Trust had returned Mara and her cubs years before, Casper's return confirmed something researchers barely dared to believe. The white genetics had not been lost. They had simply been waiting for their moment. Poachers, habitat loss, droughts, the constant pressure from other coalitions had not managed to fully extinguish them. Leucism was still there, in the genes of a few lions, running through their veins like an underground river, and Casper was its most visible carrier. The first days of his dominance were marked by tense calm. The lionesses accepted him with the caution of those who have seen many males come and go. The subadults kept their distance. The cubs, the smallest ones, would approach to sniff him when he wasn't looking. Casper did not chase them away. New males often kill the cubs of the previous dominant to accelerate the lioness's return to estrus. But Casper did not, perhaps because he remembered being a white cub on a savanna that showed no mercy. perhaps because the 11 years of exile had taught him something other males never learn. The Savanna does not record reasons, it only records facts. In the following weeks, Casper and his coalition patrolled the Satara territory from end to end. 160 square kilometers of grasslands, mopane forests, dry riverbeds, and watering holes. Every tree received his mark. Every hill, his roar. Rival males approaching the territory's boundary heard the roars of 4 throats, not one, and they retreated. The brothers' coalition was real. And Casper, the white lion, was its center. But the story was not over. Because if the white lions have taught us anything over the years, it is that their survival is never definitive. In January of 2020, the 4 lions of the brothers' coalition, Casper, Mfawathu, Casanova, and Footloose, were sighted in the Satara area, healthy and strong. But at the same time, in the private Timbavati reserve, a new white cub, only 3 months old, was sighted for the first time in over a decade, part of the giraffe pride. 2 generations of white lions, existing simultaneously for the first time in years. The question on every researcher's mind was inevitable. Would they meet? Most encounters between adult white lions and new cubs end the way most encounters on the savanna end, with distance, with indifference, or with tragedy. But the researchers watched closely. The giraffe pride, where the new white cub had been born, was moving south. Casper's territory was expanding north. The distances were shrinking. The white genetics were doing what genetics always do, seeking their own reflection. The legacy of a white lion is not measured only by the territory he dominates. It is measured by what he leaves behind when he goes. Casper had returned to Satara to claim what had been his father's, but his true battle was not against rival males. It was against oblivion, against the 13 years when white lions were only a whisper in the stories of the Shangaan elders. It was against the idea that rarity cannot survive. The white male lion, Casper, still patrols the plains of Satara. His pale mane has darkened slightly with age. The 3 scars on his muzzle have turned white, like war marks he carries with pride. Sometimes trackers see him at sunset, standing on a termite mound, looking south, toward where the giraffe pride grazes in the distance, toward where the 3-month-old white cub grows under his mother's watchful eye. And then, sometimes, Casper's roar crosses the plain like lightning, and from the south, another roar, smaller, sharper, answers. The savanna does not record it, but those who have seen the white lions know that the time of the sons of the sun is not over. It is only just beginning again. But this story is not just Casper's. Behind every white lion that returns, there is a woman who never stopped searching for them. A biologist, a conservationist, a protector of a heritage the world believed lost. The leader of the Global White Lion Protection Trust has dedicated decades to returning them to their natural habitat, working against the opposition of breeders, hunters, and skeptics. White lions, she reminds us, are not an anomaly to be caged. They are part of the Timbavati ecosystem. They always were. Whenever the white genetics manifest, white lions have a right to the savanna, because they were extracted artificially from nature, not by a natural process. And returning them, restoring the evolutionary process, is a way of correcting a mistake that should never have been made. The Shangaan song says that when a white lion returns, the world rebalances. And on the plains of Satara, beneath a sky tinged with orange and red, the white lion, Casper, rests among his brothers. The lionesses draw near. The cubs play in his shadow. 11 years of exile, 8 brothers lost, 3 scars on his muzzle, a war that has barely begun. But the savanna, for now, is at peace. The wind shifts. Casper lifts his head. His ears swivel south. Something moves on the horizon line. Perhaps it is another coalition. Perhaps it is the new white cub, growing too fast for his age. Perhaps it is simply the next chapter in a story the savanna never finishes telling. Casper roars once. The sound crosses the plain like a warning, like a promise, like the confirmation that the cycle continues. And the savanna, always moving, always hungry, always relentless, keeps turning. Because the story of the white lions does not end here. It never ends. It only waits for the next one willing to listen. The male with the white mane stood up. He shook the dust from his back and walked toward the pride. The cubs, playing in his shadow, scattered for a moment, then returned to surround him, trusting. There was no threat in his posture, only the stillness of one who has found his place after 11 years of searching. The lionesses began moving toward the watering hole, and Casper followed at a distance, without haste. The Savanna accepted his presence as it had always been meant to be. A white lion in his territory, surrounded by his own, doing what lions have done since the memory of the species began. Reaching the water, Casper drank deeply. His reflection trembled on the surface of the watering hole, a white blur against the dark mud. The image was the same he had seen as a cub, the same his father had seen in him before he fell. A promise of continuity. Casper's 3 coalition brothers gathered on the opposite bank. They drank without looking at each other, but the way their bodies were positioned said everything. Casper was in the center, and they protected him with the same unwavering loyalty he had shown them throughout the years. The sun kept its relentless course. The air smelled of wet earth and crushed grass. Somewhere to the south, a young lion, perhaps white, perhaps not, was opening his eyes to the evening, preparing for his own story to unfold. But that story was not Casper's. His was already written, not in human words or conservation records, but in the scars across his muzzle, in the miles of terrain he had traveled, in the pride now resting safely under his watch. The sky darkened, and the moon began to rise. Casper lay down in the tall grass, closed his eyes, and let the night cover him with its shroud of shadows. The Savanna fell silent, not because something had come to an end, but because what needed to happen had already happened. And the white lion finally rested,